Okay, good evening, everyone. And thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on the Common College Counseling Curriculum. Before we dive in, I wanted to do just a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who have never used this platform before, there should be a chat box off to the right where you can type in your questions. I see a couple of you have already used it. That's wonderful. If you don't see it, however, you might just need to click on this. There's a little speech bubble in the lower right-hand part of your screen. So if you click on that, that should open up the chat box for you to submit any questions throughout the webinar. So please feel free to use that. Send your questions to us. We'll do our best to get to as many of them at the end. But we are trying to keep this webinar short. We know we're working into a lot of your evenings, and for those of you overseas, we know that you might be just starting your days. So we'll do our best to keep this brief. We'll go into some quick introductions. My name is Jamie Conkey. I am the head of engagement for Concourse Global, and my background is primarily in international admissions. I've worked for three very different universities here in the U.S., and I am joined by two of my colleagues. I'll let Marissa go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Marissa Gambardella, and I am the engagement coordinator for Concourse Global. Similarly to Jamie, my background is also in international admissions. So I have traveled and recruited students internationally. I also have experience counseling them through the application process. And then finally, I did spend some time in international student services with a specific focus in working with English language learner students. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Marissa. So I'm Joe Morrison. I'm founder and CEO of Concourse. My background is originally in technology. I was a software engineer for many, many years, building trading systems on Wall Street. And more recently, I started working with my wife, Kim Morrison, at a company called Grok Global, helping universities with international strategic marketing and staffing. So I worked there for a number of years. And in Concourse, we were kind of bringing together ideas from technology and international education. So I'm excited to be part of this.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move into the next slide, and I wanted to go over just sort of a brief overview of what today's webinar is going to be about so that you know what to expect. We're first going to kind of go over the whys and the whats about the curriculum, and we're also going to talk about the format and the future and how to contribute. I guess before we dive into that, if any of you have not yet downloaded this document, I'm going to ask my colleague Marissa if she could. There we go. So there should be a little C4 info button off to the right, just above the chat box. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, no worries. We have it here in the chat box for you to download. There's a link that will take you to the download. So that will also be passed around in emails, and it'll be on Facebook and things like that. So don't worry, you'll always have access to it. That's kind of the point. All right, so we're going to move into the why. Why did we create this curriculum? I think it's kind of important for you to know a little bit about the background of how this document came about, and also its future. So as you probably know, Concourse is an organization that created a free online counseling platform for high schools and for their students. So while we were developing the platform, as you can imagine, we spent a lot of time talking with counselors from all over the world, from a very wide variety of schools. And we had a couple of really main takeaway points, and I'd like to share with you. So the first one is that counseling is hard. It seems like, as in any industry that's experiencing progress, change, and growth, that it just keeps getting harder, right? The rules keep changing, the interest areas keep changing, students and trends are always changing, and now we have global politics that keep things changing, and it really is impossible to kind of stay on top of all of it, and even if it's your full-time job. And the second takeaway is that basically counseling is really a lot like higher education in that it is not one size fits all. We know that the needs of one school are not necessarily the same as another's. So in some schools, counseling may be a multi-counseling office with lots of resources and professional development, maybe a library and a steady stream of university representatives always visiting. You might have a dedicated class period set aside just for helping your students in their higher education pursuits. But in another school that might be just down the street, counseling may be just an individual math teacher with no real counseling training, no budget, no experience with foreign education systems, and a limited network. And they're just doing their best to help a student on an application. So, in either case, as different as those two scenarios are, the intention is always the same, and that's helping students advance. So what we wanted to do was to help, and that's sort of where Concourse comes in. We know that our field is full of collegial and helpful individuals who want to help not only their own students, but also others. So while there's forums and there's organizations out there, there's really not a centralized place to share and to learn. And that's why we created the Common College Counseling Curriculum, or C4, which is probably what we're going to refer to it as going forward, because it's kind of a mouthful. So we've started with a handful of really brilliant minds on both the counseling and the university admission side. And we sort of put together this first version of the C4, and we organized our thoughts and decided on what was kind of an easily digestible format so that this document is useful to you no matter where you are in the world and no matter what time of year. So I also think that, as you know, access is becoming more and more and more important in our field. So we felt that it was really important that our contribution to this industry be as accessible as possible for anyone who wishes to use it. So that's why the C4 is free. And that's why we are treating it as an open source document. And that's why it's so important that you, our community, help us to shape and share this resource with others. So now I'm going to turn it over to Joe, our founder, to talk a bit more about how open source works and about the Creative Commons licensure, which is the licensure that the C4 falls under.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so the way we're licensing this software is inspired to some extent by the tradition of building open source software in the software industry. And the idea behind it is we wanted to make this available as a free resource, right? So we wanted the rules of engagement to be that everybody can kind of feel like they can use it for their own purposes. They can remix it. You can do whatever you like with it. So the challenge is in the early days of the software open source movement, people would just put cool software into the public domain. But the challenge with public domain is that essentially what that means is the author is relinquishing claim on the document or the materials and putting it out into the public. And what used to happen in the software world is that people would then sometimes take the software, remix it, and then start selling the remix commercially and not allowing anybody else to remix theirs. They could sort of take it and make it private again, because once it's not owned by anybody, people can do that. And so in the software industry, they invented this concept called the copyleft, which is actually a cute name and is now embodied in this Creative Commons license. And what it means is that the software is not in the public domain, or the document is not in the public domain. It actually comes with strings attached. Okay, and the strings are simple. They're not commercial. You can still use it for free for any purpose. The only string is that if you remix it or change it for your own purposes, you have to share too. So in the Creative Commons license, that's called share alike. So that's one of the terms that we've got in this C4 document. So if you would like to take it, what we've built, and adapt it for some other purpose, you're welcome to do that. That purpose can even be commercial. There's no problem there. But if you make a remix or an adaptation of it and somebody else asks you for that, you have to give it to them too. So essentially the rule is nobody can take it closed. And the other requirement that we ask is the attribution requirement, which is really what we're asking for is an acknowledgement that we're the original source of it. And so in terms of copyright, Concourse holds the copyright only so that we can help enforce those terms and we can make sure that it stays open. So this is, if any of you are interested in more details, you can ask us after the call, or you can look up the Creative Commons license yourself. It's been used by many, many authors for many, many purposes. It's not a license we wrote, it's just kind of in general use. So I hope that makes sense. Just the simple takeaways to boil that down. In terms of the C4, we're guaranteeing that in perpetuity, you can use this for any purpose that you want. You can think of it as your own. You can think of it as a community resource, and nobody's ever allowed to take it private. Any adaptation of the C4 will also remain public. Okay, that's all on that. Back to you, Jamie and Marissa.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to kind of jump in and go over the format that that the C4 is in. So if you have had a chance to take a look at the curriculum, you'll have seen that we focus on activities for students in their final years of secondary education who are planning to apply to universities in 6 of the biggest markets. So that would be the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Australia, and New Zealand. So when we sat down and we were thinking about how best to present the curriculum, we really wanted to choose something that would be as easy to digest as possible. As Jamie mentioned earlier, the level of experience or resources available to college counselors can vary pretty greatly. Some schools have those trained and dedicated counselors, while at other schools, the counselor changes from year to year. It can be faculty members kind of taking turns counseling students. So our hope was to present the information in a way that would allow a counselor to pick it up at any point in the year, find those important action items for that particular time, and get going with their students. We wanted the document to serve as kind of an intro for a new counselor who might be able to read through the curriculum from start to finish and really get a sense of what to expect at different points in the process. Or you can have a counselor maybe reading through this curriculum before the start of the year, and they can begin to flesh out their class activities, understand when their busiest points will be, and then start to plan to have a really successful year. So in order to accomplish this, the curriculum had to be simple, it has to be clear, and most importantly, it has to be effective. So the way we chose to present the curriculum, as you may have seen if you've had a chance to download it, would be to break it down a couple of months at a time, with each page being dedicated to a particular destination for a specific period of time. So in the table of contents, you'll see that we've separated out year 12 or final year and year 11 students. So while it is listed as year 12 in the table of contents, we understand that some of you might be working with year 13 students. You could have some gap year students who come back to you for counseling. So just keep in mind that those pages listed under year 12 or final year are referring to those students as well. We've also included links both in the table of contents and slides like the example you're looking at here, which are providing overviews for each time period. So these links that you'll see here, so where it says United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, those are live links that will bring you directly to that page of the curriculum, which should make navigating the document a little bit easier. So for those final year students, you'll find a page for each destination included in this edition, broken down into 2-month chunks. So the example that we're looking at here would be for students applying to United Kingdom and some activities and things to keep in mind for early on in the academic year, so August and September. On the left side of the page, you will see a bit of an overview that has some important points that you should be keeping in mind for that time period and that destination. And then along on the right side of the page, you'll see those recommended activities and then resources at the bottom. Sometimes we will include live links within the overview. There'll be links in the recommended activities, and then all of those links will be listed again under resources down at the bottom right of the page as well. We have also included dedicated pages with activities for year 11 students. These currently are only broken down by time frame, not by destination. The thought was that typically year 11 students are doing a lot more research. They might be doing strengths and interest assessments, and those tend to be pretty similar regardless of where the student will end up studying or applying. But as we start getting more and more contributions and the curriculum begins to grow, it's likely that we'll be breaking out final year pages into individual months or separating overviews from resources. And as the knowledge pool grows, we'd love to see pages dedicated just to activities or only have sections for worksheets or just tips about applying to a particular destination, which I think is a perfect segue actually to start to talk about our vision for the future of the curriculum. So where we want to go. As we've said, this version is just the starting line. It's a jumping off point. We're very excited to see this community come together as it does so well and keep working towards building and compiling a dynamic curriculum. We've actually already received offers from a few counselors who have some extra experience working on adding Korea and Japan to the curriculum, which is awesome, and we're very excited about that. We're also looking to add some other university destinations that can be a bit tricky to navigate, like Germany, for example. So ultimately, we're very open to the types of information, the types of resources, or the tips that the counseling community would like added. The addition of worksheets or in-class assignments would be a great resource for a college counselor to have in their arsenal. So even if you're going through the C4 and you might see that we have some similar activities, it's still important to contribute because, as we said before, every school is different. The activities that they might need to do might vary greatly from school to school. So anything that you are willing or have to contribute would be a great resource for another counselor. And I think what we're so excited about and what we really want to reiterate is that this curriculum can be what the counseling community makes it. Contributing that go-to class activity that you use to really get students engaged, or tips that you've developed over your experience for keeping organized, would be invaluable to a new counselor that has less experience or has less resources. So we're expecting to see this document grow and see it change as counselors add their own activities, their resources, and tips. And we are so excited to see how the international education community can work together to help build this into a really dynamic document that will help to provide guidance to college counselors all over the world. So I'm going to pass it back over to Joe, who is going to tell you a little bit more about how to contribute.
All right, thanks, Marissa. Yeah, so in terms of how to contribute, we very much are keen to get more collaborators on this. We're very much keen to get people submitting ideas and new content to make the curriculum richer and more generally applicable. So there's different ways you can contribute. If you find something that's like a small error or correction or extra piece of information that you want to put in that's minor, the simplest thing to do is just email it to us at info@concourse.global. We'll receive that and we'll incorporate whatever additions we feel like fit into the document. And that's one simple way to contribute. If you want to contribute more frequently or on a deeper level, then let us know that. You can just send us a personal note at info@concourse.global and say, I'd like to do more. And so people who are working with us more closely, we can, for example, bring you into the group of people directly working on the Google Doc that is the underlying source for this right now. So there's different ways kind of mechanically that you can incorporate content. We're thinking about maybe down the road moving this into a wiki format. So it's a little bit easier for people to just click on pages and add content and edit. So we're looking at that as a possible technology platform to host future versions of this. But in any case, the contributions that we'd welcome the most would be, fully fleshed out pieces of information. We also welcome comments like, could you please add more information about this or that? But for the most part, we're hoping that people will actually help, roll up their sleeves and start writing content for us and say, here's a paragraph you can add to this page, whatever. Any contributions automatically inherit the same licensing terms as the whole document, which means that we're guaranteeing that they'll stay open to the community, just like the core document itself. We will, however, do attribution. Like if somebody makes a contribution, we want to acknowledge those contributions, and so we have a page at the end of the document, basically saying, here's who the contributors are. So there's some way of acknowledging who's helping out. Yeah, that's basically all on how to contribute.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And thanks, Marissa, for going over the format and into the C4 a bit more. We wanted to take a little bit of time. I know some of you have been sending us some questions, which is great. I'm trying to keep an eye on them over here. So we wanted to save some time at the end for your questions and or suggestions for the document. So just a quick reminder before I start reading a couple of these, if you do have questions or comments, you can post them in that box off to the right in the chat box, and we will do our best. If you send them later, or if we don't get to them, we will follow up with you separately. Don't worry, we'll answer everyone. So the first question, and Joe and Maritza, please feel free to jump in. I will just read these and let either one of you answer. I think some of these maybe already answered, but I'll let you go back over it just in case. This one is, if I contribute, will I be acknowledged?
Right. Right. So I'll speak to that. Yeah, we're in general, we want this to feel like a community project. So we hope that people contribute really because they want to make the document better more than because they want to something on their resume. But you're welcome to put it on your resume. We'll try our best to acknowledge contributors. The contribution has to be meaningful. So, just a typographical error probably wouldn't count, but, somebody who contributes a decent, a new piece of information or a chunk of text or whatever, we'll try and keep on top of those acknowledgements at the end of the document. If we ever forget anybody by accident, you can always remind us.
Yeah. And I don't know if again, if you've had a chance to look, there is a great example of a really great contribution is from Dr. Andrew Moe, our friend at Swarthmore, who gave us a direct link to a piece of research he's been working on for a long time about universities and colleges in the U.S. that offer application fee waivers. So he's got there's over 1,000 schools in there. It's incredible. And so and you'll see his name on the end of our document as well, because he contributed that, which is amazing, a great resource. So thank you, Dr. Moe. Okay, next question I have is, I have students who go to China for university and some looking to Hong Kong, and I don't know too much about these systems. Are you thinking of adding these regions?
I can take that one. So as we mentioned earlier, this version of the C4 is just the starting line. It's, the jumping off point. We have already had counselors reach out to us who want to work on adding Korea and Japan to the document. So these are counselors that have experience, working in in those countries and helping students apply to those systems. So we know that there's a lot more to add, and we are always open to collaborating and adding those destinations. So if you have experience in a certain country, or you have a large number of students who end up studying in a particular location, reach out to us if you're willing to collaborate. That's really what's going to help develop the document and help adding those new locations. But yes, we do have plans to add more destinations.
Awesome. This one says, guys, this is awesome. Great. Is there a concourse info session I can attend separately? I can answer that. Yes, if you are, we wanted to keep this webinar pretty focused on the C4, but of course, we're more than happy to chat with you about Concourse and what we do and how we work with students, counselors, and universities. So if you're interested, you can also pop that into the question box off to the right, and we'll be more than happy to follow up with you separately outside of this webinar. Okay, I have another one here. It says, I use a lot of other resources right now that might be helpful, but they're just links. Can I just send you links? I didn't create them. I guess they mean they didn't create the actual content.
Right. That's okay. We welcome any contribution. If there's links to useful resources, we think that are relevant to the counseling curriculum, they definitely belong in here. And so we'll do our best to include them. If possible, if you send us links, it would be great if you could also add a little bit of context for us, I use this resource in such and such a situation at such and such a time, so that we can place it into the right context in the document. But yes, send links, send whatever you can send at any level of detail.
Awesome. All the things. Okay, and then I think this might be the last question. Will you include every contribution?
Right. I'll take that one as well. I think
Okay.
that speaks to the sharing policies. But yeah, we'll try and we'll consider it. But no, we're not promising that everything that gets sent to us will automatically be included in the C4. We will try and also curate and edit the contributions that get sent, because we want to do our best to bring all the materials together and have this be a coherent document that hangs together. So if somebody sends us something that doesn't quite fit in anywhere, or it's too far from the counseling curriculum kind of mandate, if you like, we might leave it out. But in that case, if somebody else wants to do a remix that includes that, they're welcome to do that. We'll try and do our best to make the document comprehensive enough that people don't feel the need to make other versions, but it's always a possibility that's allowed by the license.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think That's all the questions that I see in here for now, but there might be a few more. But like I said, any questions that come in after this, we would be more than happy to follow up with you separately. But for the moment, I just want to take a second to say thank you again so much for your time today, spending it with us and learning more about this document. We are so grateful to this community, and we're so excited to hear how you are going to contribute and how you plan to use this document. We hope you find it useful. Please feel free to share it with your friends or colleagues, anyone that you think in this community that would find it useful. This document's for you. We made it for you. So share it, contribute, and we look forward to hearing and seeing your contributions. Y'all have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.